Well, good morning, everybody. I think we should start off by just checking in on Lee and getting some of the newest information about where Lee could go. And this is a satellite animation from early this morning. This is GOES 16 rapid refresh, so you're getting an image of it every minute. We're looking at infrared cloud top temperatures. And I think a lot of us were watching Lee yesterday as it kind of went through a bit of an eye wall replacement cycle. And we can see some pretty intense convection today, early this morning on the northern side of this. So while Lee kind of wobbles back and forth, somewhere around 120 mile an hour sustained winds, we will start to see probably some gradual strengthening just in the very near term before it begins to weaken on its normal progression to the north. We also have for the first time the cone put out by the National Hurricane Center showing us some interaction with land. So remember, the cone and its area is basically historical track error. Right now the center of the track is expected to go right here to Nova Scotia and to Newfoundland, but you can see that the western edge of this gets all the way over to like Cape Cod and to Maine. So we'll just keep an eye on this for the rest of this week. We're going to look at the same steering currents we have. It's all about the timing of those steering currents, but it will maintain this major hurricane status for a little while longer before it begins to weaken. That's very common for these systems as they move north. It's all due to wind shear. It's all due to the temperatures, really the temperatures of the ocean changing. And by the time it does get here, we expect it to be below hurricane strength. Remember, that's with a sustained wind below 74 miles an hour. Doesn't mean it can't still do a lot of damage. That's usually a major flooding threat still at these points, but we're just kind of keeping an eye on the main things here. Okay, next I want to show you the newest ensemble forecast. So this is our super blend here, and as we play it forward, again, Lee's very slow throughout this week. It doesn't really get moving until late this week by like Friday, getting into Saturday, moving farther to the north. And this is where the blend of models is taking it. You do notice that there is a pretty big spread between the GFS, the UK Met, and the European model. And just to see the solid lines and the colors that we match them up with here showing that spread. But overall, I think there's pretty good consensus that this is likely going to be coming in somewhere right in the middle of this or this oval that you see here. So that would be out there to the 17th. And as we play forward, this is going to move throughout getting here into the Canadian Maritimes. Along the way, it is going to produce some pretty rough seas. I want to show you that really quickly here. This is kind of an Atlantic basin view of those seas. As we play this forward through the day today, getting into tomorrow and Wednesday, out there toward Thursday and Friday, I just want to pause it here. Let's leave it at Friday morning. And just take note, this is Margot, this is Lee. You can see widespread 40 to 50 foot wave heights here, but just along the coast, we got a lot of this shading kind of deeper into this red. So we could see 10 to 15, maybe 20 foot waves just offshore. So as I said yesterday, very disruptive to the shipping industry as we think about it here. But the scenario is still the same. By the time we get to Friday, when the hurricane is here, it missed the first wave, right? So this one moved out quicker than anticipated. And behind it, you see it just kind of gets pulled into the back side of that. But still, the steering currents for this have a lot to do with both the flow of this a trough that's coming out of Ontario. It has a lot to do with the ridging that's to the east of it, and the net effect of this is it's getting pushed to the north, and we see that pretty conclusively in the models, with more than likely a landfall somewhere around Maine, getting into Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. That's the best track that we can go. Now, each time we see a deeper trough coming through here, this means another shot at some cooler air and possibly some drier air coming into the Midwest. We're going to come back to that in just a few seconds here. But real quick, before I transition away, I did find it interesting to see how calm the water is here in the Gulf of Mexico. So just take note. I mean, the model is right now projecting wave heights that are just tiny out here in the Gulf of Mexico. And the Gulf of Mexico is really yet to kind of fully engage in the pattern with tropical systems yet this year. And these are the ones we're keeping an eye on. So we've got 97L, which is here. We also have 70% chance of this next wave forming, which would be starting here and then going in this direction. And here's Margot and Lee. So we're kind of getting the full view of it. And finally, here's just an update on where over the next 10 days we're expecting anything to develop. Tropical depression strength or stronger. And I just want to point out again, it's not in the Gulf. Not a lot of homegrown systems just yet. But we are passing the peak of the hurricane season, which means we have the second half of this to go. So there's still a lot of time, and there's still very warm water here. So this could be just something to keep an eye out on. I want to show you some radar data from yesterday. This animation just kind of plays through here, showing you the front that's sagging from Michigan all the way down to Texas. And it delivered some locally heavy rain. Of course, the day before, we saw some big storms that produced a lot of hail. Talked about those yesterday. But a lot of this in through here over the last 12 hours or so, just a good soaking rain for a lot of folks right in through this area, mostly down farther into the southern plains. We did see, look at this, some of the rain coming into Southern California. Had some storms in parts of Nevada, and again down here in parts of the Southwest as well. And if we just look at those 48-hour totals, this is what I've got for you. So just important to note here, look how heavy the rains were in parts of the panhandles getting up here into Kansas. Same thing for parts of Colorado, and there's the main front to the north. And I was just thinking about this particular region. I'm going to take you to Garden City. I just want to show you a graphic here. Remember, a year ago, which is this line I'm kind of tracing right here, this is how dry it was in Garden City last fall. So they had one event here in late July and then almost flatlined on precipitation, just nothing through the rest of the year. And then they started off, now this is the one that's got the color shading, with no rain until about April 28th. So very few events, almost none, for nearly 10 months, to be honest. And then what happened is this year we've just had repeated heavy rainfall events early in the season along the western plains, getting toward the Rocky Mountains. And you can see that the precipitation stats, I mean, just compared to a year ago, we're at 24.7 inches. A year ago at this point, we were at 8. So 3 times the amount of rain where we were a year ago at this point. Just incredible to see that transition. Now, was it all perfectly timed? No. I mean, this is when they need the rain in that area. And it was just bone dry. So this really had a terrible impact on the winter wheat crop. And then all this moisture that came in late helped summer crop there, but not that wheat crop that's grown in that area. So just something to consider. And what are we looking at over the next 7 days? Again, we're going to have high pressure sink in. We're going to have a stalled out frontal boundary that's going to push into parts of Texas and kind of upline itself with the Rocky Mountains. So this is where we're continuing to expect stormy conditions. Isolated storms in the southeast, wetter in southern Florida, and this is Lee. Okay. Now, we do have 2 shots of a front coming through the Midwestern United States. We're going to take a close look at that, but I wanted to add some context to this. We've been talking a lot about the Mississippi River, which is nearly 10 feet below low stage at Memphis. We've been talking about the soil moisture deficits here and also in the southern plains. I just want to show you a 60-day precipitation compared to normal map, so it's a percent. And it's just important to take in how the crop finished in certain areas, like down here from southern Mississippi all the way through Texas, southern Oklahoma, getting over into New Mexico. I mean, there's some places down here for a 60-day stretch measured nothing. And to get some moisture back into this area, like you just saw on the previous map, is going to be critical. But take a look at this spot in Kansas. Have a look up here in Iowa, northern Illinois, parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Red River Valley of the North, just extremely dry. And while we typically think of summers as dry in the West because of their Mediterranean climate, just to take note, this is compared to normal. So we can start to see now what was going on in coastal Washington, Oregon, and down here into California. This, of course, was from Hillary. Okay, most of that was from Hillary. We had the terrible flooding that happened coming out of Missouri into southern Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee that occurred, and also the flooding that happened here in parts of New England, all in that, all kind of captured by this map. So I want to show you 1 meter or about 36-inch soil moisture availability. This is modeled data. This is not observed data. But we're just looking for what moisture is there should the crop need it to get finished. Okay, and it's just extremely low values down here. We're down here in percent values well below 10% across a broad section of the Western Corn Belt and Central Corn Belt, and also across the South and the Cotton Belt. So just important to see these numbers. A lot of this land through here is dryland farming, so that's why we're looking at it. We tend to look away from the regions that are irrigated, because this map doesn't make sense for those particular areas. But let's go from there and have a look at the flow. So this is where we're going in the near term. So Margot and Lee. This is the deep trough that's sitting over the Great Lakes. That's the one that was supposed to yank Lee out, but it's going to move through quickly. But it does have some cold air, and I'll talk to you about that frost threat in a few moments. I want to watch this shortwave coming right in through here, and we're going to take a look at where that's going to send a front through the country by just looking at the European model this morning. I looked at both models. I think the Europeans got the best handle on the timing right now. So this was our front early this morning as it sags from Michigan all the way to Texas. And then by this afternoon and this evening, it's pushing on off. There's the low moving into Ontario. Here it is. That's the frontal boundary. So isolated storms in the southeast. You can see the frontal boundary sagging and then making its turn and butting up against the Rocky Mountains. So this is tonight, getting into tomorrow, We're going to pause it right there. I don't know, let's get tomorrow night, Wednesday night. So wet all across the east as the front staggers and kind of sits right in this area. I say staggers, really kind of slows down temporarily. And then it just kind of drapes right into this area. So you can just see the wet conditions all around this big area of high pressure that's sitting over the central United States. So from there, don't see a lot coming in the west coast. It's just getting into Thursday, and it's the same thing. The front just barely made its way off the coast, wetter in Florida, but there's that frontal boundary. See it? Now there's another low that's trying to come up here into parts of the Canadian prairie. It's got a secondary front right into there. Not a lot of cold air behind it, but it's there. And then that front kind of dips through by Friday. See the low? There it is. So it's kind of fun to look at this. We have one low here, one that's way off the page that left a front that's dangling like that. This low has got a front that meets up with it right here. So they're kind of daisy chained together just to show you that pattern. So this is Friday night getting into Saturday morning. That low spins up over Ontario. Very low chances of precipitation throughout Saturday into this area. It's not zero, but low. But what we'll be watching on Saturday and Sunday is the eventual landfall of Lee. And right now, the European operational run, this is a little more than 5 days out from when the run was initialized, does bring this into Maine. That's the current run there. But remember, the spread in the ensembles is what's critical to watch. We then keep playing this out into early next week. This is next Monday, getting into Tuesday, and not a whole lot going on. I mean, just look across the country. It's your late summer, early fall look, right? The flow's weak, the moisture's usually not there, and this is what we just tend to get. So if we look out over the next 10 days and put that all together, I like to compare it to average and show you this is the 10-day precipitation anomaly. So you can see where the front stalls, but the drier conditions here. There is a weak system rolling through, so maybe a little bit better chances for rain in a few isolated areas here. But we're drier west, drier in the Canadian prairie, drier through the plains in the Midwest, and drier unless you get into the heavier rains right along the coast, and then what Lee eventually does. I always love to look at these probability maps. They just add a lot of context. So this is your chance of getting an inch in the next 10 days. Kind of spells out the same story. And this is where we're looking for those drier regions, less than half of an inch. That's the probability of less than half of an inch of precipitation. So there's some early harvest windows that are open in here. And I've got these questions as to whether or not they close up. Now, you know, if you've been following me, that I've been making a case, although it's speculative and it's on very little evidence, it's mostly based on history, that we do turn wetter in the Midwest late. And it's also going to be a time period that if we turn wetter here, we're going to be turning wetter along the West Coast as well. And I want to show you kind of some of the latest I've got for you. We're going to stare down on the North Pole, and I'm going to show you what's kind of controlling this pattern out there on the first full day of fall, September 22nd. Got a deeper trough in the North Atlantic. It's kind of helping this ridge kind of push up here in parts of, eastern Canada toward Greenland. But what I'm watching most carefully is where the jet is, the subtropical piece of it right there. So this trough is what's critical, because this is what the 500 millibar height pattern looks like. And there's a lot of other things to look at and diagnose, but what I want to get at is the result, which is to show you this. That is the piece. So that previous map, this is the same view, but we're not looking at troughs and ridges, we're looking at wind speed. It's the same view showing you where that subtropical piece of the jet's coming in. Now, if this begins to come in and extend like this, okay, this is what could eventually start to increase the chances for rainfall in there. And we're starting to see some of the week 2 models show up with that. So the CPC pushed this farther to the east and moved the drier conditions off the Mississippi over toward the eastern Great Lakes. It's lined up there in the European, and now you see the European model showing up with some wetter conditions here. So that is the transition I'm thinking we'll likely see at the end of this month. But again, it's all speculative. It's based on just a couple of things, and that's okay. It's how we look at the weather. So we're out there pretty far in the forecast past the equinox here. Okay, what about on the temperature side of it? Because finally, we've got the National Weather Service issuing these frost advisories. We've been kind of concerned about the frost in this area, so we have a few of them out today. And this is where we're expecting frost over the next 7 days. So it'll be in parts of lower Michigan, the UP, parts of Wisconsin, and Minnesota. All of this is at high elevation right now. Okay, so that's what you're seeing over here in the west. But if we take a look at those minimum temperatures, this was today, this morning. As we go forward, this is tomorrow morning. So a lot, look at that. That white contour says where the models are predicting, and the National Weather Service are predicting temperatures to be below 32. So that's your cool morning here. This is the next one on Thursday. Cool air moving throughout the Midwest, but look at the warm-up happening behind this. I want to show you the high temperatures for that one. Here's today's highs, struggling to get out of the 50s here. in the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. 70. Oh my gosh, this is just incredible to think about the heat that was endured here and to now see this cooler air get into place into Texas. This is now getting into Wednesday, as we've been joking about all week. 83 in Dallas, 83 in eastern Montana. What a interesting way to get there, right? Go from there into Thursday. Little warm-up happening right here ahead of the next front that comes in on Friday. There it is. Much cooler air from the front range down to Texas, cool across the east. There's Saturday. Watch the west warm back up this weekend. There's Sunday. We will be hotter in Montana than Texas on Sunday, and then we get into Monday, and that's our latest update we've got out for the next 7 days. The models are still pretty similar in the forecast on temperatures over the next 15. So here's day 1 through 5. This is day 5 through 10. And as we play this forward, we do get this warm-up that's happening. Now, the reason for that is, see how the cooler air is coming in here? That's where the subtropical jet's going to start to nose in. So there's a warm-up that's out ahead of this. We got to have that to get the moisture return to start to increase those chances of precipitation later in the month. And again, I know it's disruptive to harvest for the midsection of the country, but I'm concerned about the Mississippi Basin and the water that needs to be in it later this fall and for barge traffic. So we've talked about that for a month or so now. Just want to keep that narrative going. All right, as we move on from there, I do want to show you the newest European weeklies. I've not really had much agreement with the weeklies lately, so I haven't been showing them. I fear that I'm showing them to you now because they're confirming a bias I've had in the forecast, but that's okay. I just want to be transparent that that's what I'm seeing here. And it's this, and it's this. So this is that late September into October switch that I was thinking was going to happen because of El Nino. It's just that the models are picking it up now. It's still speculative. Just I've said that 10 times, but there's a reason for it. And then we just cannot assume that this is going to be dry because of this whole second half. I mean, October is a very busy month for hurricanes. And we've not yet got anything out of the Gulf other than Idalia and Harold. So we'll watch this very, very carefully. All right. But that's the newest update there. The temperature forecast is not going to look good. It's not. And what I mean by that is it's not going to look accurate. I'll just show you. The model's like, just bring on warmth everywhere here. This is late September to late October. And I don't buy it. The reason I don't buy it is because that's not normal for an El Nino fall to see just broad scale nonstop warmth. So I don't want this map to be confusing anybody. It's going to be a lot of change because September, October are transitional months. All right, long range, and then a quick international update. The Bureau of Meteorology released another forecast. They did this on the 12th today. And they've got their newest forecast for El Nino just continuing to be far outside every other forecast model's predictions. Still up here by December, January in Super Nino status, 3.3 to 3.2 degrees C above average. And just look, you compare the Bureau of Meteorology. So this is Australia. I've done this before, right? Australia, Canada, the Europeans, the Japanese, the French, the United States, and the British. And I'm going to just jump all the way to December, because it is only the French and the Bureau of Meteorology that are way up here, well above 2 degrees C in terms of ocean temperatures. So what I'm trying to say here is that if this is where they are, NOAA is like right down here. Much, much cooler El Nino event. And I have to side with NOAA on this one just because of where I currently see the ocean temperatures and what I've got coming up below. So in order for this to verify, this warmer water has got to advance out into this area. I think that's part of the way that could happen. But overall, I don't see it occurring that way. Still, El Nino is going to have a control on this pattern. We've talked a lot about what it means. Quick review. Getting into fall and winter, expect the subtropical jet to start to crank. It's going to kind of come in like this in two different kind of fashions. And then we'll expect later this fall into winter, the polar jet to come over the top and dive down. Now, it doesn't look like this every day. It's just the more preferred view of what the jet stream is going to do. So that's just another review of it. We've looked at all the long-range models. We're waiting on one more, the CPC, and I'll give you that as soon as that data comes in. But as it stands, just to make a case here as to why I think NOAA's probably got a better handle on this, the ocean temperature is only 1.1 degrees C above average here. And if you look, they're assuming that by the time we get into September, the ocean temperatures are a full degree above that. So I don't understand the logic behind this. I'll have to just do some more digging, but I'm going to go on the weaker side of this. Now, let me rephrase that. I'm going to go on the weaker side of the forecast range. It's telling you that we're going to have a strong El Nino all winter, not a Super Nino. That's kind of what I'm going after here. All right, next thing to think about here is because of we're watching that El Nino progression, we're just going to have to keep a close eye on the risk of a later start to the monsoon in northern and eastern Brazil. So for those unaware, this is Mato Grosso. I don't have a line between Mato Grosso and Mato Grosso do Sul. We're building new maps right now, so we'll make all those changes later. But anyway, 35% of soybeans and about the same for corn is grown in this state. And this is Goiás and Tocantins, Minas Gerais. We're getting down here into Sao Paulo. This is Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul. So that's kind of some of the bigger states in Brazil that grow a lot of grain. Now, as you just think about this, where's the wet weather right now? It's all down south. It's all down here in Rio Grande do Sul, Uruguay, the Paraná River Basin, which is right in through here. This goes out through Rosario into Argentina. We're drier in Argentina. We're drier in most of Mato Grosso, Goiás, Tocantins. I mean, these are the areas that plant early. They can, of course, start planting in 3 days, but we're not getting those strong indications of needing to go rapidly after a plant because they got to wait on better moisture than this. Now, maybe in this part of eastern Mato Grosso they'll go, but outside of that, I don't think so. So we'll just watch it carefully. We're going to watch that progress. I think the most important time for planting progress in South America is October 1 to about November 15. They've got to move fast in October to really get the crop calendar away from being compressed due to weather conditions. All right. So from here, I do want to show you something new that came out from NOAA. This was their newest update on the $2023 billion weather disaster event. Remember, this is adjusted for inflation. But as we look here around the United States, just a lot of severe weather early. I mean, we've forgotten about that in lieu of the drought, which will likely be included on this because of the agricultural losses later in the year. But through August 2023, there have been 23 separate billion-dollar disasters. That beats the old record of 22. And we've got everything from severe weather and tornadoes to the flooding in California. There's the derecho event that went through the Midwest, Hurricane Idalia. Look at all the hail reports this year. And don't forget the flooding we had in New England. So, and there are the fires that hit Maui. So pretty crazy. In fact, I'm pretty excited. University of Illinois and University of Kansas are having a big charity game at the University of Illinois for basketball just to raise money for this. And I got my tickets the other day, and it was a privilege to be able to buy those tickets just to support what's going on down here with the cleanup effort. But I do want to show you one last thing, and this satellite image is over Libya. That's where you are. And this was the result. This was the leftover of Storm Daniel, which we talked about last week as having a major impact on Greece. So right down here. Now watch this whole animation with me. What you're going to see here is this is the extremely heavy rain we saw last week over Greece. Record flooding. In fact, it was not just last week, but about 10 days ago. What was left of it moved right over Libya, causing just devastating floods as well. Now you can look, of course, a lot of other things going on around the world here, but it's just to make a point of quite a bit of inclement international weather that is causing major issues. It's going to be stormy throughout Europe this week. We're going to have much warmer temperatures here, and look at the wet weather in Southeast Asia as well. Just a few things to take note of here. All right, I'll talk to you again on a Wednesday morning. Have a good one. Thanks.